Phuthuma Nathi, the Black Economic Empowerment Scheme associated with the Johannesburg Exchange-listed multi-choice group, continues to make significant strides in promoting economic inclusivity in South Africa. It is set to distribute an impressive 1.375 billion rand in dividends, reaffirming its commitment to enhancing shareholder value and supporting the financial well-being of its diverse investor base, which includes domestic workers, professionals, and even small businesses. Since its inception in 2006, this initiative has empowered over 75,000 shareholders, providing them with a unique opportunity to indirectly own a stake in MultiChoice South Africa. This morning, Clive Ramathibela-Smith, Senior Executive Partner, Hecare Capital Partners, joins me to discuss this. Thank you so much, Clive, for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, my brother.
Okay, so how do you assess the overall impact of Phuthuma Nathi's scheme on the economic empowerment of Black South Africans since it came on board in 2006?
So Phuthuma Nathi, basically in Zulu, meaning run with us or travel with us, is an economic or Black economic empowerment scheme that is built and developed to simply make accessible the shares of MultiChoice, which is the biggest multimedia company on the African continent. And so as part of the government's initiatives to try and introduce policy, to try and level the playing field, to equate the previously disadvantaged or the Black African majority in the country, this policy was introduced in 2002. And it was implemented a little bit later on by many other organizations and conglomerates within the South African space, whether it's in mining or resources, all the way to multimedia platforms such as MultiChoice. And so it's done relatively well. There were challenges from 2006. I think back in 2012, there was complaints about the dividends being paid and allocated appropriately. And later in 2016, in actual fact, there were other problems, which meant, as you read carefully there, that only 75,000 South Africans have been able to benefit from it, directly or indirectly. And so it's still a very much a work in progress. But nonetheless, I'm sure everybody who says 1.37 billion rand is small is taking the mickey. It is a significant partnership. It is sad, however, that it is happening at a time when, in actual fact, when you do a reflection on this policy by government, which was later in 2019 revolutionized to be referenced to, it was BEE, which is Black Economic Empowerment. And then by trying to restructure it, the government called it BBEE, which means broad-based Black Economic Empowerment. And still, if you do the calculations and you do the numbers, it still has done very little to enhance and increase the amount of participation of Black South Africans into the real economy.
So if you say that it has done little when you talk about its impact for the Black community in the country, what other areas would you have expected this particular scheme to cover? How broader do you think it should have gotten into? And let's understand how impressive it has been in terms of returns, and what are the potential that you believe beyond now it should have achieved?
Well, dividends, I think it's very nice to get dividends once you've put an investment in some sort. One, I think we all know that they could have done more. We know this because only 75,000 beneficiaries are listed on that particular scheme. South Africa sits with 62 million people today. On average, I would say an active population of about 18 million. So you can see the numbers just, it's a very small drop in the ocean that this particular scheme has been able to change people's lives in an effective way. What can they do to improve on that? It's going to be very difficult, my brother, because as we speak right now, MultiChoice, DSTV, the platform is losing a lot of revenue because of a lot of people unsubscribing and finding different ways to be able to consume entertainment that is different from your satellite television. And even in the latest results, you will see there, they've dropped they've lost a whopping 1.6 billion rand worth of revenue. People unsubscribing to the platform. So yes, there's been beneficiaries. The question is, how long will it last? And also, how diversified can this particular program or this particular brand and company change? How can it move to make sure that it creates new revenue going forward? Those are the questions that have been asked of the CEO, Mr. Calvin Malema, to say, well, is he prepared? Is he ready? Can he steer the ship? Or is this ship just about to go into what we know as the 1912 tragedy in April of 14, which is the Titanic? So it is a difficult one to swallow. I'm a Black African, if you haven't noticed. And so obviously we want Black people to do well. We want Black business to do well. However, it is very difficult to see how this conglomerate is going to turn away from the winds of change as it continues to compete with the likes of Netflix and other entertainment platforms that have become more easier to achieve, and they are growing very fast on the African continent.
Well, Clive, you cited challenges around a drop in customer base and revenue, but there's another challenge that has to do with dividends being paid and the claiming of benefits. Now, I'd like to find out what some of the key challenges are for this scheme. What are the challenges it is facing when it comes to distributing dividends to shareholders, particularly regarding unclaimed dividends now, and how do you think these challenges can be addressed?
As we speak, just outside of MultiChoice itself, South Africa sits the Financial Services Conduct Authority, which is the authorization organization that regulates financial participation in South Africa and regulations as well. What has happened is that they sit with over 40 billion rands worth of unclaimed benefits. Now, what does this mean? It means that they cannot trace, track, or find the individuals that need to be having these monies. And most of them are people who are working, either they were migrants, they moved, provincial migrants, that went to work in Johannesburg or went to work in the Northwest in the mining sector, and they were not able, therefore, to capture their details correctly to their employers so that they can be able to trace them and track them and give them their payments, whether it's retirement or pension or provident funds. Similarly, with MultiChoice, the beneficiaries, the people that they distributed these shares to, are companies, some of them. And these companies had employees. And so when they cannot trace or find those employees, this dividends cannot be allocated, meaning that it goes back into the scheme Phuthuma Nathi. Now, there were efforts back in the days, 2018, 2019, by MultiChoice and Phuthuma Nathi to try and identify and find these individuals, to find them so that they can be able to pay them, because it is sad that some of these people are among the most poorest of the poor, but they cannot access this money. They cannot access this dividends, and yet they're shareholders to the scheme. Some of them have passed away. They're deceased. So their families have a right to claim so that they can get that. But if the family doesn't know and the company does not have the correct details so that they can send this information to them and so that they can be able to claim the funds and the rewards that they've rightfully earned, that's becoming very, very challenging and hard to do. It has to do with three elements. One, correct details that needs to be recorded per employee. And if you don't have the correct details, whether it's a cell phone number, the address, physical address, residential, it becomes very difficult. Then second part is the beneficiaries to the shares. So if the main party is not involved, the beneficiaries should be able to claim. But if they don't know about it, it becomes very difficult. And if the company cannot trace those beneficiaries, whether it's the cousin, the brother, the sister, or the children, it's very difficult then to allocate those particular dividends. The last one, which is also very critical, has to do with the fact that sometimes, in many instances, you'll find that the companies were collecting the shareholdership contributions, but were not allocating it to the right people. That has happened even in the pension fund industry. In the retirement space, it can happen, but it also shows that there is a lack of interest by these conglomerate companies to identify and find the right people that deserve to be getting this money at the right time. Because remember, under these dividends are asset managers, and they are earning their fee, whether the money is being paid over or not. And so there is a little bit of disconcerting information that's coming into the sector that says, why aren't they doing more to find these and identify these beneficiaries or these benefactors so that they can be able to get a share and remove the scourge of poverty within the Black community?
And I think, Clive, a fourth element would be probably the upgrading or updating of information on their database, because, of course, if people are migrating, they need to continually share that information with the scheme to ensure that they're up to date with their current address. But then let's look at the changing and challenging economic landscape in South Africa. Of course, we can scale it up to Africa as it is. And I'd like to find out, what are your predictions now for the future growth of Phuthuma Nathi, and how do you even envision the scheme when it comes to adapting to the potential economic downturns and the shifts that we've seen in the markets?
Two things. One, the BEE schemes, like the Phuthuma Nathi schemes, they served their purpose, and they were relevant at the time when they were developed, but they haven't done enough to fight the scourge of inequality, poverty, and unemployment in South Africa. So, what is it that they're supposed to be doing? They should be doing more to empower private business, small, medium enterprises that are Black owned in the country so that they can strengthen them. MultiChoice has still got a monopoly over South Africa, and to some extent, we can say to Africa as well. The question is, what is it that they have to do? Rather than just keep on paying the same 75,000 people, if that at all, you need to scale up and help in development, in infrastructure development, in creating opportunities, in developing innovative ways to upscale young Black people. Now, I know what they're going to say if they hear this interview right now. They'll say, well, we are doing businesses, we're doing set-top satellite boxes, we are helping. Is it enough? That's the question, based on the revenues that you've been collecting over the last 24 years. And the answer to that is no, it's not. More can be done, and you can start controlling. Right now, as I speak to you, brother, there's a competitiveness that's taking place between them and some of the local channels who are trying to access things like sports, for example, the Olympics, for example. And those things need to be done in a very congressive way.
So, Clive, I'd like to dwell more on, because you talked about the monopoly of this particular company. So I'd like to look at probably other schemes, empowerment schemes that might likely come on board to help, because if we're looking at 75,000 out of the entire population that could have benefited from this empowerment, just as you have said, it seems to be a drop in the ocean. So is there a possibility whereby we might have other empowerment schemes come on board, probably fashion, just like Phuthuma Nathi, to help the citizens?
We've got some of those, by the way, which are listed on the Johannesburg Securities Exchange. The current report on BEE deals and structures and transactions that includes schemes like Phuthuma Nathi only contributes to about 6.5% of the entire JSE in terms of black and white. 6.5% of the entire exchange. So. This is an exchange that is, as we speak, currently is worth 19 trillion rand on the exchange. So 6% is little to nothing to do anything about doing empowerment and to show that you're serious about transforming the country. And so I agree with you that the schemes, there must be more schemes, yes. Particularly for people who don't have skills, the people who are trying to make it into the world, trying to adapt into the new technologies and all that. But you need to have new companies, black companies, on the Johannesburg Securities Exchange. And there's very, very, very little of that happening at the current moment, because the regulatory framework that allows a company to list on the exchange is so difficult, filled with red tape, particularly when you're a black company. So the question is, how do you make it easier? How do you provide access? You need to allow more black businesses to be able to be empowered, to be able to list if need be for raising of capital, but also to make it easier for us to have more BEE schemes. And let me tell you something that is quite interesting that I've realized. Many of the Chinese companies, you'll remember South Africa is part of the BRICS. many of the Chinese companies, because of regulatory framework, continue to contribute as if they are a black company. That is not helping South Africa either. So the Chinese in South Africa are recognized on an equivalent as a black business. That in itself is something that needs to be relooked, because
what if
it
it's a
can
Chinese? What if it's a Chinese company that employed a larger percentage of the black community?
on paper, I can be white as white can be, have 5,000 employees that are black and one employee as white. That company is still 100% my company, 100% white owned. So the dynamics of hiring, yes, there's a score sheet on a BEE that you are able to say, I've got this many words. What you need to be doing is saying, I'll keep the 50% or the 49% to empower this particular people. I'm going to give them the majority shareholding as my employees and take them into trust and into belief that they'll be able to transform your business. Capable people, by the way. I'm not saying that you must take people because of the skin of their color, but you can use. We've got many people who are qualified, who are experienced enough to be able to sit in those chairs.
All right. Clive Ramathibela-Smith, a Senior Executive Partner, Hecare Capital and Partners. Thank you so much for talking to us.
It's a pleasure.